Happy Mother's Day to the 3 mothers that probably watch my videos. I know my mother watches my videos sometimes, so if you're watching this, shout out to Mom. Thank you for, I guess, having me and bringing me into this world. I went over to my grandma's house. I just got back from today, and the highlight was there was a string hanging down from my shirt, and I went to light it on fire to get rid of the string, and I lit some arm hair on fire, and it really stunk on the porch, and not too many people were happy with me, but the food was good, and that's all that matters. And yes, I am wearing a gold chain right now. I wear a gold chain sometimes when I go out. I didn't feel like taking it off, so deal with it. But there is something that I did want to talk about very briefly today on the channel because it involves Nintendo stuff, and I found this and I found it to be very interesting because of the fact that, well, Nintendo's kind of popular on this channel, so I wanted to give you guys something to enjoy today. We recently, of course, had the Nintendo Investors Report where we learned about the financial status of Nintendo. Spoiler alert, they're making money. The Nintendo Switch is selling very well. Software is selling very well. We made a video on it on Thursday talking about all of the cool stuff that was involved with that. If you guys missed that video, make sure you guys go check that out after watching this video. But one of the more interesting things that always happens from these are the investor Q&A portion. Now, if you go over to Nintendo of Japan's website right now, the investor Q&A portion is not available to be read, which kind of sucks because you get a lot of interesting stuff from there. Some of those people ask absolutely bizarre questions, and I have to wonder, where were my questions? I own 12 shares of stock in Nintendo, so I am an investor. I should be at these meetings in the forefront for like the American consumers so that I can ask the hard-hitting questions like, yo, what's up with Metroid? What's going on with this game? When is it coming out? Like, these people just softball questions. I can't stand it whatsoever. It's so ridiculous. Like, they look at it from the business side of things, and I mean, I guess you should because they're investing money in it, but I invested money into it too, and I want to look at it from a fan perspective. But of course, like I said, this information hasn't been given to the public yet as far as a full official translation of it. But there is an individual by the name of David Gibson on Twitter who goes and attends these meetings, gets all the information, and then translates it because he speaks Japanese. I'll have a link to his Twitter account in the description box down below. Should you guys want to follow him, I recommend you do if you have any interest in what Nintendo says during these meetings and you don't want to wait for the official Q&A translation. Well, there was a few things I wanted to highlight. Most of it was kind of just fuddy-duddy stuff that wasn't a huge deal, but there was one very interesting thing that I saw in this translated stuff that I kind of wanted to explore and talk about. So one of the questions asked was, what were the assumptions for Nintendo's outcoming uplook for fiscal year of 2021? To which they answered, Animal Crossing drove growth last year, which continued into quarter 4. Noted that volumes for first-party titles such as Animal Crossing were up year over year in quarter 4 as well. And first-time Animal Crossing users tend to buy other first-party titles as well, which, I mean, it does make sense. I could see like Animal Crossing people getting into games like Pikmin or Miitopia or stuff like that. You know, more casual style games. I don't know that an Animal Crossing fan is going to run out there and buy something like The Legend of Zelda or something like that. Obviously, that game has no trouble selling itself, but I do find that interesting because Animal Crossing kind of is a gateway for Nintendo in getting more people into their ecosystem, and obviously with things like the Animal Crossing mobile app, that helped a lot as well. So, you know, nothing too shocking there. They also went on to say that Super Mario 3D World went very well in quarter 4 along with other titles. For users who bought the Switch in the holiday season, the next game title is usually bought digitally. The option for purchasing digital has become the norm. Now, obviously, some of that has to do with COVID. You know, you can't just rush out there and buy a game instantaneously if you live in certain regions of the world. Obviously, America is getting a little bit better with stores opening up and stuff like that, but some people are still leery about going places like that. So I'm not surprised to see digital doing so well, especially in this post-pandemic era or current pandemic era, just, you know, getting out of the muck through it all right now. So that'll be something to be interesting, though, that I'll keep my eye on because physical games usually sell very well on Nintendo platforms, especially versus things like Sony and Microsoft platforms. So it'll be interesting to see how that data happens in the future. Now, another thing that was brought up was, where's the further penetration for the Nintendo Switch? Meaning, how is Nintendo going to impact the marketplace even more? You might remember in our video on Thursday, we talked about that Nintendo is actually ramping up production of the Nintendo Switch versus what was done in 2020. In 2020, they sold about 20 million systems, and now they're forecasting to sell 25 million systems for the fiscal year of 2021, to which they go on to say about 20% of Nintendo Switch purchased is the second device in the household. Expect that to continue to grow. Also seeing nice growth in Asia, which has very good room for growth. Europe, given its scale, has room to capture growth as well. So once again, kind of a stock answer. I'm not surprised that the Nintendo Switch is a complementary device for a lot of people because of the fact that, it does a lot of things that other systems don't do. Something like the Nintendo Switch Lite can definitely be an impulse buy for people. Yes, it's $200, but you get access to the full Nintendo Switch library, minus like 1 or 2 games that don't support the Nintendo Switch Lite. So I think it definitely outweighs, the bad things with the good things with the Nintendo Switch Lite. Obviously, you're going to want to expand in other markets as well. Kind of a fuddy-duddy answer, kind of beating around the bush, because when we get into the final answer, that's actually the more interesting part of this. That's where things really start to open up. So someone asked, in what areas is the increased research and development being spent? Because Nintendo is increasing their research and development budget, which of course is alerting people like, hey, what's going on with this? To which they said, we are still midway through the Switch life cycle. So software plus outsourcing costs are increasing for the Switch, which is the major factor. Also, cost per title is increasing and need a certain level of scale. We are investing in online as well. Although midway through the Switch life cycle, it is necessary to invest in the next platform, where hardware and software integrated will continue. So that's where things get kind of interesting for me, because now you're talking about a bunch of different things going on with this statement. First off, outsourcing costs for Nintendo Switch games means that Nintendo could be potentially outsourcing some games and potentially IPs to other companies. We kind of saw that with Metroid Prime 4 being done by Bandai Namco originally and then brought back to Retro Studios. But maybe there's other projects that Nintendo is currently outsourcing. Of course, we've seen things like Hyrule Warriors that was developed by Koei Tecmo more so than Nintendo. So it's not something outside of the realm of possibility. Also, cost per title is increasing and need a certain level of scale, meaning that maybe we're going to start seeing some bigger budget Nintendo Switch games that are first party games. Once again, going back to a game like Metroid Prime 4, I expect this game to have a very large budget because it really feels and looks a lot different than your typical Nintendo game does. It doesn't have that Mario or Zelda feel to it. When you look back at the best looking games on the GameCube, the best looking game on the GameCube is Metroid Prime, bar none. Play that game with a GameCube HD adapter and it will still blow your mind. So I think that's a very interesting statement, but the final part of the statement is where things get even more interesting. They're investing in online. So that could mean two different things. Of course, we have already seen some of the online investment when it comes to the Nintendo Switch. They recently changed their online stuff from the NEX server, which was like 20 years old, to the NPLN server, which is now being utilized in games like Monster Hunter Rise. And if you played Monster Hunter Rise online, you would know that this is probably the best online experience for the Nintendo Switch. You have up to 4 players playing at once, and there's no slowdown, there's no lag, there's no hiccups, there's really nothing negative to say about the online portion of the game. Sure, it could have been a bit more robust when it comes to things like voice chat and things like that. I'm just talking about the actual game and how it runs online. When you compare that to games like Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, it's a night and day difference. And of course, there's going to be people that say, well, it's not based on netcode, it's based on, peer-to-peer stuff and blah, blah, blah. Look, I get that, that's fine. But obviously, expanding your online stuff is going to be a very positive thing. And on the flip side of that, you also have the Nintendo Switch Online service, which people still are not satisfied with this service. The sprinkling of NES and Super NES games is nice. I like playing these games again. I like having them on my Nintendo Switch, but obviously there is a lot of room to grow with the Nintendo Switch Online service. So by putting in money into research and development into the online prospects of the Nintendo Switch is a very positive thing. And I think that's the first time we've heard Nintendo actually talk about improving the Nintendo Switch Online via research and development funds. So I'm very interested to see where this goes, because it's something that really is sort of long overdue. Maybe not necessarily for like a full-on rehaul or anything like that, but definitely improvements need to be made. And doing things like switching the server to something more stable and something that runs your games better is definitely a step in the right direction, but you also have to have those features in it as well to get people to want to sign up for the Nintendo Switch Online service. And then of course, they talk about new hardware with this. Although midway through the Switch lifecycle, it is necessary to invest in the next platform, where hardware and software integrated will continue. So it's not a huge surprise. Like, let's be realistic. Whenever a company is done with a console, they're already looking at the next console, whether it be a refresh of the current console that they have on the marketplace, such as a slim model or a pro model, a beefier model, or just the successor to that system. Now, of course, the Nintendo Switch is in its 4th year. They plan to have the system be around for 8 to 10 years, but I always go back to the point that I just don't necessarily necessarily feel like the Nintendo Switch in its current state is powerful enough to survive another 4 years in terms of relevancy. We saw this huge drip and drop off with the Nintendo Wii. The Nintendo Wii was great. It was a great system. There were tons of great games on it, but really a lot of the games started to look outdated towards the tail end of the life cycle of that system, especially compared to stuff like the PS3 and the Xbox 360. I'm not really sure Nintendo can afford to let the Nintendo Switch have that sort of thing without a Switch refresh. Now, there was actually a story that Spawnwave told me off the Spawncast last night. I can't recall all the details or else I would have covered it. I'm sure he's going to cover it tomorrow in Newswave. Something about a screen manufacturer talking about the Nintendo Switch revision in their investors report or something like that. I might be mixing up something there, but it was definitely something along those lines. So I really feel like this is the year to at least learn about this Nintendo Switch revision. And it looks like Nintendo has increased their research and development in order to potentially fund this system, or I guess it could be a Switch successor that we won't see for, 3 to 4 years, but I don't know. I don't believe that. And you guys know I don't believe that, but I could be completely wrong on this. I just wanted to share this information with you guys because it's always interesting when Nintendo talks about their online stuff and of course talks about new hardware because it's exciting. You want to see new innovations with the Nintendo Switch. You want to see the system continue to be successful. It's already a runaway success. Why not introduce something a little bit more powerful to keep the Nintendo Switch alive and relevant for the next 4 years and be able to have games that look and play great? And you don't even necessarily need to get a PS5 or an Xbox Series X because right now the games aren't really all there. But I just found this information to be very interesting. Let me know in the comment section down below what you guys think of all of this. What do you think Nintendo is doing with the online stuff? Do you think there will be a Switch successor before a Nintendo Switch revision, or do you think that we will get a Switch revision? And finally, why am I not invited to these investors meetings? Like, fly me out to Kyoto, or however the hell you say it. A lot of people were making fun of me for saying Kyoto wrong, and I'm probably still saying it wrong, but I don't know. And as always, thank you for checking out this video. If you are new to the channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button, be sure to like and share the video, and as always, I'll catch you guys on the next one. Later.